I paid $12,000 for my nephew's surgery, then got disinvited from his celebration. He needs good vibes only, my sister said. But when the hospital called about unpaid bills, my name's Megan, I'm 34, and I make my living as a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company out in Phoenix. I've always been the steady one in my family, the dependable person who shows up when things fall apart, the one who loans money that somehow never finds its way back, who solves everyone's messes quietly without expecting any thanks. Growing up, I figured out early that being reliable often meant being invisible until somebody needed rescuing. My sister Claire, who's 3 years younger than me, might as well have been born wearing a crown with the way our parents doted on her. She's always been the dramatic type, the kind who could turn a paper cut into a full-blown medical emergency that required everyone's sympathy and attention. When we were kids, if I scraped my knee, Mom would tell me to shake it off and keep going. But if Claire got a splinter, she was whisked off to urgent care like it was a national crisis. That never really changed. Claire married her college sweetheart, Evan, when she was 25, and they had their son Lucas 2 years later. Lucas is 8 now, and honestly, he's a great kid. Curious, funny, and one of the few bright spots in my complicated relationship with my sister's family. While Claire inherited every ounce of our parents' flair for drama, Lucas somehow ended up grounded and thoughtful. Maybe it's because Evan's a calm, level-headed guy who doesn't get worked up about every little thing. Or maybe Lucas just lucked out in the personality department. I've always tried to be the best aunt I can be for him. I take him to baseball games, help out with his science projects, and never forget his birthday. I don't go overboard with expensive gifts, just thoughtful ones that fit what he's into. Last year he mentioned wanting to see Saturn's rings, so I got him a telescope. The year before, he went through a volcano obsession phase, so I found him a chemistry set. Meanwhile, Claire treats me like a mix between her emergency hotline and personal ATM. If her washing machine breaks, I'm her first call. If she wants a weekend off, she assumes I'm free to watch Lucas. If she's eyeing something she can't afford, she drops hints until I step in to help. It went on for so long that I stopped realizing how lopsided it had become. Until about 6 months ago. That's when things got serious. Lucas started complaining about stomach pains. At first, Claire brushed it off, blaming it on junk food or growing pains. But the pain got worse and he began losing weight. Evan pushed for a doctor visit, which turned into tests, then a specialist, and finally a diagnosis that changed everything. Lucas had a congenital defect in his intestines that needed surgery. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was serious enough that waiting too long could cause real problems. The surgery would cost around $15,000 total, and even after insurance, their share came to about $12,000, money they didn't have. Evan manages a retail store, and Claire works part-time when she feels like it. They live paycheck to paycheck in a house that costs more than they can comfortably afford because Claire insisted they had to be in a good neighborhood for Lucas. Their cars are newer than they need to be, their bills always just barely covered. Appearances for them always mattered more than stability. When Claire called me crying about Lucas's surgery, she was hysterical. "Megan, I don't know what we're going to do," she sobbed. "The hospital wants the payment up front, and we just don't have it. Lucas is in pain every day, and they won't operate until we figure it out." I didn't even think twice. Lucas needed that surgery, he's my nephew. "Don't worry," I told her. "I'll cover it. Just focus on getting him healthy." The relief in her voice was instant. "Oh my God, Megan, thank you. I knew you'd come through. You always do. Lucas is going to be so grateful." That same afternoon, I called the hospital and paid the $12,000 directly from my savings. It wasn't money I could easily part with. I'd been building a down payment fund for a house, but Lucas needed help and I could give it. The surgery was set for the next week. I took time off work and got to the hospital early with coffee and breakfast sandwiches for Claire and Evan. Lucas was nervous but trying to stay brave. I sat with him before they took him in, playing his favorite card game and telling him about the new video game waiting for him once he got home. "Thanks for being here, Aunt Megan," he said softly. "Mom said you're the reason I can get my stomach fixed." I squeezed his hand and smiled. "You don't need to thank me, buddy. That's just what family does." The surgery went perfectly. The doctor said everything had gone according to plan, and Lucas would make a full recovery in a few weeks. I stayed until he was awake and comfortable, then went home feeling genuinely good about what I'd done. It felt right, helping him when he needed it most. Over the next couple of weeks, I checked in often. I brought him books and puzzles, picked up groceries for Claire and Evan, and even set up meal deliveries from Lucas's favorite places while he recovered. His healing went great. He was back to his usual self within 10 days, eating well, laughing again, already asking when he could rejoin his soccer team. The surgeon said his recovery was remarkable. Claire flooded social media with posts about Lucas's miracle recovery and how blessed they were to have such wonderful doctors. It was around that time that Claire started putting together what she called Lucas's recovery celebration party. She wanted to host a big event to mark his successful surgery and recovery. Family, friends, and neighbors all invited. She spent endless hours on the phone with our mom, obsessing over decorations, food, and the guest list like it was a royal wedding. The party was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon, 3 weeks after Lucas's surgery. I was actually looking forward to it. Seeing him smiling and back to his old self made me genuinely happy, and I wanted to celebrate that with everyone. I'd even gone out of my way to get him something special. A signed baseball from his favorite player, something I'd hunted down through a sports memorabilia dealer. But 2 days before the party, my phone rang, and what Claire said left me completely speechless. "Megan, I need to talk to you about Saturday," she said, her tone oddly stiff. "I've been thinking, and I don't think you should come to Lucas's party." I froze. "What? Why wouldn't I come?" She let out a long sigh like she was explaining something obvious to a stubborn child. "Lucas is still recovering, and he needs to be surrounded by positive energy only. The doctor said stress can slow healing, so we're trying to keep the environment peaceful." I frowned, trying to make sense of it. "Claire, what does that have to do with me? I'm not stressful for Lucas. He loves hanging out with me." "It's not really about Lucas specifically," she said carefully. "It's about the overall vibe. You've just been kind of intense lately. Always calling, always asking about his recovery, always checking in. It's a lot. And honestly, some of the family feels like you've been making this whole thing about you." Her words hit me like a slap. "Making it about me? Claire, I paid for Lucas's surgery. I've been there every step of the way. How is that making it about me?" "See? That's exactly what I mean," she said sharply. "You keep bringing up the money. It makes everyone uncomfortable. This is supposed to be a celebration of Lucas's strength and our family's love, not about who paid what." I sat in my car outside the office, gripping the steering wheel. "The money thing?" I said, my voice tight. "Claire, I spent $12,000 so Lucas could have that surgery. That's not pocket change. And we appreciate it, we really do," she said in a tone that didn't sound appreciative at all. "But Lucas doesn't need to feel like his recovery was charity. He needs to feel supported and loved, not indebted." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Charity? You begged me for help. I stepped in because I love him, because I'm family. That's not charity." Her voice grew sharper. "Megan, this party isn't about you getting recognition. It's about Lucas, and we all agreed that it's best to keep the focus on him and on the doctors and nurses who helped." I blinked. "We all agreed? Who's we?" "Mom and Dad think it's best to keep things light. Evan feels like you've been a little overwhelming lately. Even Lucas mentioned you keep asking him how he's feeling all the time." My stomach dropped. "So you've all decided I'm the problem. The aunt who paid for the surgery is too much for the recovery party." "Please don't make this difficult," she said quickly. "No one's saying you're a problem. We just think Lucas needs calm, stress-free energy right now. Bringing up the financial stuff or making him feel like he owes you doesn't help his healing." I pulled into my driveway, still gripping the phone. My own sister had just uninvited me from my nephew's recovery party because I supposedly brought bad energy. Never mind that I was the reason he could even have the surgery. "Fine," I said after a long pause. "I won't come. But I hope you realize how hurtful this is, Claire. I helped because I love Lucas, not because I wanted attention. Being treated like some kind of burden after everything I've done is just disappointing." "I'm sorry you feel that way," she replied flatly. "But we're doing what's best for Lucas." After hanging up, I sat in my car for a long time, stunned. Hurt, angry, confused, all of it swirling together. I'd paid $12,000, supported them through a medical crisis, And now I was being excluded for being too intense. That weekend, while the party went on without me, I did something I probably should have done a long time ago. I sat down with my bank statements and went through every transaction tied to Claire and her family over the past 5 years. The total nearly made me sick, almost $30,000 in loans, emergencies, and help. None of it ever repaid. Most of it never even acknowledged. The surgery was just the latest and biggest example of a pattern I'd ignored for years. I'd covered a car payment when Evan was between jobs, paid the security deposit on their house, covered Lucas's sports league fees, helped with groceries, even bailed them out during a few tight months that always seemed to happen right after a vacation. I'd basically been funding their lives while being treated like an afterthought. By Monday, I decided to let it go. Lucas was healthy, and that was what mattered most. I'd swallow the hurt like I always did and move on. But Tuesday afternoon, I got a call that stopped me in my tracks. "Miss Carter," the woman said politely. "This is Jennifer from the billing department at Phoenix Children's Hospital. I'm calling about the outstanding balance on Lucas Evans's account." I frowned in confusion, my heart suddenly pounding. When Jennifer from the hospital mentioned the outstanding balance, I felt my pulse quicken. Outstanding balance? "I already paid Lucas's portion of the surgery 3 weeks ago," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes, ma'am," she replied, sounding polite but firm. "I see that payment, but there have been additional charges since the operation. Follow-up appointments, extra tests, prescriptions, and some post-surgery monitoring due to minor complications. The total outstanding balance is $4,800. My stomach twisted. "I'm sorry, but I'm not the patient or the parent," I said quickly. "You should be calling Lucas's parents about any new bills." Her tone softened. "I understand, ma'am, but you're listed as the financial guarantor on the account. When you made the payment for the surgery, the paperwork indicated that you were accepting financial responsibility for all related costs." I froze. Claire had apparently signed me up as responsible for every future medical expense, without telling me. So while she was uninviting me from the recovery party for being too intense, she was simultaneously making me legally liable for thousands of dollars in hospital bills I never agreed to cover. "I'll need to call you back," I told Jennifer. "There's clearly been a misunderstanding." The moment I hung up, I dialed Claire. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. "Hey Megan, what's up? I'm kind of in the middle of something." "The hospital just called me," I said flatly. "They said there's $4,800 in new charges for Lucas's treatment, and that I'm listed as the financial guarantor. Care to explain?" There was a brief pause before she answered. "Oh right. Yeah. When we were filling out the surgery paperwork, they asked who'd handle additional costs. I put your name down. Since you already paid for the surgery, it just made sense." My mouth went dry. It made sense. I repeated slowly. "Claire, you put me down as financially responsible for more bills, without asking me?" "Megan, it's not that much money," she said defensively. "Lucas needed a few extra tests, some medication, and the doctors wanted to monitor him to be safe. It's routine." $4,800 is not routine, Claire," I snapped. "And you don't get to sign me up for financial responsibility just because you were too stressed to deal with it." Her tone hardened. "Look, I was under pressure, okay? I had to make quick decisions. And since you were already helping, I assumed you'd want to make sure Lucas got the best care possible. By committing me to pay for bills I didn't know existed." I shot back. "Claire, I already paid $12,000 for the surgery. I've supported your family for years, and now you're trying to guilt me into covering more." "It's not like that," she protested weakly. "I just thought. You thought you could spend my money without asking because you always have," I interrupted. "Well, not this time. I'm not paying another dime. I covered the surgery, what I agreed to. Anything beyond that is on you and Evan." Her voice rose sharply. "You can't just abandon Lucas now. He's still recovering. He needs those follow-ups." "Then his parents can pay for them," I said coldly. "You know, the people actually responsible for his care. We don't have $4,800, Megan. You know that." "Then you shouldn't have signed up for more expenses you couldn't afford," I said. "You don't get to keep making reckless choices and expect me to fix them." She let out a furious noise. I can't believe how selfish you're being. Lucas is family. Exactly, I said. And I proved that when I paid $12,000 so he could have the surgery you couldn't afford. But being family doesn't make me your personal bank. What am I supposed to tell the hospital? She demanded. Tell them you'll set up a payment plan. Tell them you'll figure it out. Tell them whatever you want, but don't tell them to call me. And with that I hung up. The next day, Jennifer from the hospital called again. Miss Carter, she said carefully. I spoke with Mrs. Evans about the outstanding balance. She told us you're no longer willing to cover the charges, but you're still listed as the guarantor. We need to know how you'd like to handle this. Jennifer, I said, I need to remove myself as the financial guarantor from Lucas's account. I agreed to pay for the surgery only. Mrs. Evans added me to the paperwork for additional costs without my knowledge or consent. Understood, she said kindly. Let me transfer you to our financial services department so we can correct that. It took an hour of phone calls, emails, and signed documents, but eventually I got it done. I was officially removed as the financial guarantor, and the hospital would now have to deal directly with Claire and Evan. That afternoon my phone practically exploded with calls. Claire rang 6 times. Evan called twice. Then my mother started in, clearly after getting an earful from Claire. I ignored them all, letting each call go to voicemail. The messages came one after another, starting out apologetic and quickly turning manipulative. Megan, please call me back, Claire said in one. There's been a misunderstanding about the hospital bills. Then another. The hospital told me you took your name off Lucas's account. I can't believe you do that to him. He's still recovering, and now he can't afford his follow-up care. This is incredibly selfish. He's your nephew. Evan's messages were calmer, but no less guilt-ridden. Hey Megan, I know you're mad about the party stuff, but let's not drag Lucas's care into this. Rachel, Claire handled the paperwork wrong, I get that, but he still needs treatment. Maybe we can figure out a payment plan or something. Then came my mom's voicemail, one long guilt trip wrapped in motherly concern. Megan honey, Claire called me in tears about Lucas's hospital bills. I don't know what's going on between you two, but that little boy needs his family right now. Please call me so we can figure this out. I didn't return any of the calls. Over the next week, the calls and messages kept coming. Claire tried different approaches, guilt, reason, pleading, but I ignored them all. Meanwhile, I did some digging into Lucas's supposed follow-up treatment costs. What I found made me even angrier. The appointments and tests she'd signed me up for weren't emergencies or critical care. They were routine post-surgery checkups, the kind of monitoring doctors recommend just to be extra cautious. Lucas's recovery was going smoothly. His records showed he was healing exactly as expected. In other words, Claire had essentially enrolled me to pay for premium, unnecessary medical care without my consent, and then tried to guilt-trip me into accepting the bill when I caught on. 2 weeks after I'd removed myself from the hospital account, she showed up at my apartment without warning. When I opened the door, she was standing there with Lucas, both looking upset. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the living room like she owned the place. Lucas lingered awkwardly behind her. Hi, Aunt Megan, he said softly. Are you mad at us? My heart cracked a little. I'm not mad at you, buddy. Not at all. Claire plopped down on the couch uninvited. Megan, this has gone far enough. Lucas has already missed 2 follow-up appointments because we can't pay for them up front. The hospital wants payment before each visit now. I crouched down to Lucas's level. How are you feeling, kiddo? Any pain? Any problems? He shook his head. I feel good. My tummy doesn't hurt anymore. But Mom says I need to see the doctor again to make sure I'm really better. I glanced back at Claire. Lucas is fine. His recovery's complete. These follow-up appointments aren't emergency care. They're recommended by his surgeon, she said quickly. Don't you want to make sure he stays healthy? Of course I do, I said. But he is healthy. And those bills are your responsibility, not mine. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry about the party, okay? I was stressed and made a bad call, but you can't punish Lucas because of me. I'm not punishing him, I said evenly. I'm setting boundaries with you. Boundaries? She repeated, incredulous. Megan, he's family. Family doesn't abandon each other. I turned to Lucas. Hey buddy, why don't you pick out a book from my shelf? There are some new ones over there. When he wandered off, I faced her again. You uninvited me from your son's recovery party after I paid for his surgery. You told me everyone was uncomfortable with me bringing up the money, but now that you need more, suddenly it's fine to talk about what I've done. She stared at her hands. I handled that badly. I was overwhelmed and listened to too many opinions. I should have talked to you directly. No, I said. You didn't just handle it badly. You made me feel like my help was a burden. Then, without telling me, you signed my name onto more bills. That's not stress. That's manipulation. I was scared Lucas might need more care, she said weakly. I knew you'd want him to get the best treatment. What I want, I said, is for you to ask before committing me to anything. What I want is some respect for everything I've already done. I'm not your personal ATM. Lucas came back holding a book about space. Aunt Megan, can we read this one next time? Of course, buddy, I said, smiling. Anytime. Claire stood up abruptly. So that's it? You're really going to let him suffer because you're mad at me? Lucas isn't suffering, I said calmly. He's happy and healthy. You're the one struggling because now you actually have to take responsibility. We can't afford it, Megan. You know our situation. Then work it out with the hospital, I said. Set up a payment plan. Get a second job. Cut back. Do what every other parent does. Her cheeks flushed. Not everyone makes what you do. Not everyone can just drop 12 grand like it's nothing. I didn't do it lightly, I said. I thought about it carefully, and I did it because Lucas needed help. But that doesn't make me responsible for every medical bill he'll ever have. Her voice sharpened. What about everything Mom and Dad did for us growing up? What about all the times the family helped you? I almost laughed. Claire, when exactly did that happen? When I needed money for college? When I was struggling in my first job? When I was saving for a house? I've been the one helping this family for years. She grabbed Lucas's hand. Come on, Lucas. We're leaving. He looked back at me with sad eyes. Bye, Aunt Megan. I hope I can see you soon. You can, buddy, I said softly. Anytime you want. When the door closed behind them, I stood there in the silence, feeling both drained and free. I was sad that Lucas had been dragged into this, but I was relieved to finally draw a line. A few days later, my dad called, clearly after hearing Claire's version. Megan, your sister's upset. Blood is thicker than water, you know. I took a deep breath. Dad, I paid $12,000 for Lucas's surgery. I've lent Claire thousands more over the years. I've been the one helping this family, and all I get in return is being treated like a problem. I'm done. Megan, we're family. Family forgives mistakes. Whose mistakes exactly? I asked. Mine for helping when asked? Or for expecting a little respect afterward? Claire made a poor decision with the paperwork, he said. She knows that now. No, Dad, I said quietly. She didn't make a poor decision. She made deliberate choices that showed me exactly how she sees me, and I finally believe her. She sees me as a source of money who shouldn't expect anything in return. My mom tried a softer tactic, calling to tell me how much Lucas missed me and couldn't understand why I wasn't visiting anymore. Mom, Lucas can visit me anytime, I said. It's Claire who decided I'm not welcome unless I'm signing checks. She's sorry about the misunderstanding, Mom said gently. Can't you let this go for Lucas's sake? There was no misunderstanding, I told her. Claire made it very clear that my presence isn't wanted unless I'm paying for something. I'm just listening to her. The calls eventually stopped after that. From what I could tell on social media, Claire found a way to handle the follow-up costs, probably through a hospital payment plan or with help from Evan's family. Lucas kept getting stronger and healthier and life moved on. About 6 months later, I ran into Lucas at a local bookstore. He was there with Evan picking out books for a school project. Aunt Megan, Lucas shouted, running up to hug me. I haven't seen you in forever. Evan looked uncomfortable but managed a polite nod. Hello, Megan. How have you been? I'm good, Lucas, I said, smiling. You look great. How are you feeling these days? I'm good. My stomach never hurts anymore. And I'm back on my soccer team. We won 3 games in a row. That's awesome, buddy. I'm really proud of you. Evan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Megan, look. I know things have been awkward between you and Claire, but Lucas misses you. Maybe we can figure something out. I looked at Lucas, who was now listening curiously. I miss you too, kiddo, I told him. Your mom and I just had a disagreement about some adult stuff, and we haven't figured out how to fix it yet. Is it because of my surgery money? He asked innocently. Mom said you helped pay for it, but then you got mad. I was taken aback that he even knew about the money. I'm not mad about helping with your surgery, Lucas. I'm really glad I could. Sometimes adults just disagree, and it takes a while to sort things out. Evan spoke quietly. Claire really does miss you, Megan. She knows she messed up with the party with the hospital stuff. She's been thinking about calling you. I nodded. Lucas, why don't you go look at some books for a bit? Your dad and I need to talk. Once he walked away, I turned to Evan. I'm not trying to punish Lucas or make things harder for him, but Claire treated me horribly when I was just trying to help. I need her to own that before anything can change. Evan nodded slowly. I get it. I told her at the time she was wrong about the party. She got caught up in what your parents were saying about keeping things calm for Lucas's recovery. It was ridiculous. And the hospital paperwork, that was worse. She shouldn't have done that. She panicked, knew it was wrong, but figured you'd pay because you always had. She should have asked. I appreciated his honesty. I want Lucas to have everything he needs too, I said. But I can't keep being treated like I only matter when I'm footing the bill. I understand, he said. Honestly, things are different now. Claire got a full-time job and we're actually managing our finances. We don't need help anymore. That caught my attention. She got a full-time job? Yeah, Evan said with a faint smile. Turns out when you can't count on family bailouts, you figure out how to stand on your own. It's been good for her. We exchanged numbers before parting, and Evan promised Lucas would call soon. A few days later, he did. We talked for an hour about his school projects, his soccer team, and a new telescope he wanted for his birthday. Felt good to reconnect. About a month later, Claire finally called me. Her tone was different, calmer, humbler. Megan, I know it's been a while, but I was hoping we could talk. I owe you an apology. Her honesty surprised me. Okay, I said quietly. I handled everything terribly last year, she began. The party, the hospital paperwork, all of it. I was terrified about Lucas's health, and I let fear and other people's opinions get to me. But mostly I was wrong about how I treated you. I stayed silent as she went on. You paid for Lucas's surgery when we couldn't, and instead of showing gratitude, I made you feel unwanted. Then I listed you for more bills without even asking. It was awful and I'm sorry. I took advantage of your kindness. I appreciate you saying that, I said sincerely. Lucas asks about you all the time, she continued. He doesn't get why his favorite aunt hasn't been around. And honestly, I miss you too. I know I don't have a right to ask, but I'd like to start over. What does starting over mean to you? I asked. It means admitting that you've been incredibly generous and that I took it for granted, she said. It means asking before I make decisions that affect you, and respecting your boundaries when you set them. And if I ever need help again, I'll ask directly and accept your answer. No guilt trips. We talked for about 20 minutes after that about Lucas, her new job, and taking small steps toward rebuilding trust. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time in years it felt real. That weekend, Lucas came over to my apartment for the first time in almost a year. We built a model rocket and launched it in the park behind my building. He told me about school, his friends, and his plans for summer soccer camp. As we watched the rocket drift down, he turned to me and said, Aunt Megan, Mom said she was mean to you when I was sick, and that's why we didn't see you for a while. I was genuinely impressed that Claire had been honest with Lucas about what happened. Your mom and I just had a disagreement about some grown-up things, I told him. But we're working it out now. I'm glad, he said with a grin. I missed hanging out with you. I missed hanging out with you too, buddy. Mom also said you paid for my surgery so I could get better, and that I should thank you properly. I smiled at him. You don't need to thank me, Lucas. That's what family does for each other. But I want to thank you, he said earnestly. Getting my surgery fixed my stomach, and now I can eat pizza again without feeling sick. I laughed softly. Well, in that case, you're very welcome. As we walked back toward my apartment, Lucas proudly carrying the recovered model rocket, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Real hope that my relationship with Claire's family could be healthy and balanced. 6 months later, things had settled into a new rhythm. Lucas came over regularly, and we'd gotten back to the easy closeness we'd had before the surgery chaos. Claire and I talked occasionally. We weren't as close as we'd once been, but there was mutual respect where there used to be resentment. True to her word, she stopped treating my support like an endless resource. When Lucas wanted to join a traveling baseball team that came with a hefty fee, she and Evan figured out how to pay for it themselves. When their car needed major repairs, they covered it with savings and a small loan from Evan's parents. They'd finally learned how to build a stable life without leaning on me. Most importantly, Lucas was healthy and thriving. His surgery had been a complete success, and he hadn't had a single stomach issue since. He was active, doing great in school, and growing into a bright, kind kid. Watching him become his own person reminded me why I'd helped in the first place. The whole experience taught me something important about family, love, and boundaries. For years, I thought being dependable meant saying yes to everything, fixing every problem, and swallowing every bit of unfair treatment in the name of keeping the peace. But I finally understood that reliability doesn't mean allowing yourself to be exploited. It doesn't mean sacrificing your own financial security or emotional well-being to prove your loyalty. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's healthy. And ironically, it made space for Claire to grow too. She'd had to face her responsibilities without leaning on me as a safety net, and in doing so, she became stronger and more considerate. One quiet evening, Lucas and I were sitting on my couch, working on a jigsaw puzzle together. He looked up and said, "Aunt Megan, I'm glad you're in my life. You always make me feel better." And in that moment, every painful argument, every guilt trip, every sleepless night, it all felt worth it. Because the truth was, I hadn't done any of it for Claire. I'd done it for him. And if I had to do it all over again, I would. But next time, I'd make sure the boundaries were crystal clear from the start. Because love without boundaries isn't love, it's servitude. And now I finally know the difference.